Hello everyone, Ben the Pen Man here. I'm sorry, I just kicked something. It's fine. Ben the Pen Man here, and today we have an episode about National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo. Now, first things first, I made a video like a month ago just talking about the things that I was trying to do over these couple of months, starting with Pentober last month, NaNoWriMo this month, and just a couple of other things I want to do before the end of the year. And I said that I was going to make videos about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, but I didn't really know what kind of videos to make, because normally I do art stuff, and I draw, and you can film drawings, and you can show the process for them, or you could show just the final products, tell stories about them. But there's something visual, so I don't know exactly what to do for something like writing a novel, where it's all reading. So if you guys have ideas, maybe it's like a tutorial, maybe it's maybe you want to know about the story I'm writing, let me know in the comments. I really want to know what kind of videos to make, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever even watched videos about writing. So that's the thing. But today's video is just for people, because it's the 1st of November. You start NaNoWriMo in November. I'm going to get into what NaNoWriMo is in just a second. But this video is about people who want to do a NaNoWriMo, but they've never done it before, or they've tried and they haven't finished, or just kind of tips and tricks, but also just maybe even just a little bit of motivation. Because here's the thing. I think NaNoWriMo is, like, a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people get scared about NaNoWriMo who are interested in books, and they have this idea that it's something that's only for like really good writers. But I'm here to tell you today, NaNoWriMo is actually for beginning writers, and I don't want you to take that as, oh gosh, I can't even do a beginning writer thing. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, this is the kind of challenge you should take and try to finish as you're starting to write. If you can't do it, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself. It is a month-long commitment, and some people just don't have the time to do it. But I think this is a challenge that if you are trying to write novels, if you're trying to get good, you will not have a better experience trying to make a first draft than trying to do a NaNoWriMo. So, what is a NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. I think there's like this organization that kind of does it, but in essence, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to write a 50,000 word novel in 1 month, and they do the events and stuff during November. There are like events and talks and stuff that the NaNoWriMo, the organization, does, but I'm mostly just here to talk to you about writing novels. And the advice I give you today can be used for just writing your first draft of a novel too. Let's say you want to write a novel, you don't have a chance to do it in November. You can still use these methods to write the first draft of a book. But let's get into it. So, how do you write a novel in a month? That's tough. Well, the first thing you need to know is you're not writing a novel to publish in a month. It would be ridiculous to try and do something like that without basically just like not caring about the kind of stuff you're publishing. This is not to make something to publish. This is to make a first draft. This is the rough draft. This is a really rough draft because you're making it in a month. So basically, and I think that's why it's so important for beginning authors, because it's so easy. I actually tried to write my first book when I was like 7 years old, just because my aunt wrote a book, and I was just like, well, if she can do it, why don't I give it a try? And I did, and I got like 3 pages in at the time, but I just kept trying. Every once in a while I'll be like, oh, that would be a cool book. Let me start writing it. And I don't remember like any books that I tried to start writing before I was like 12 years old. But there were like 5 years where I was like just trying to write things, and I just like, I think the best one I got before I turned like 12 was like 40 pages, which is a lot considering how old I was. 40 pages is a lot, but I know what it's like to be a starting writer that has an idea, you want to make a book, but every time you try and write, it just feels like you can't get past it. And I think this is the best challenge to take if that's you. And so the two methods, there, one of them I call it the no plot, no problem method, and the other one I call the I've never gotten past chapter 2 method. And we're going to talk about both of those. But the no plot, no problem method is the first one I want to talk about, because if you've seen, I've been on my website here. It's thescratchofapen.weebly.com. I'll probably have the URL in the description. But I used this method last year. Basically what I had in my head was this image of a road floating in the sky, on like an orange maroon sky. And the road was just floating there. And that's all I had. That's all I had when I started writing this book. I had other book ideas. I've been writing books for a while. I have so many ideas. But I wanted to do a NaNoWriMo without having a plan beforehand. And it was actually a really cool experience for me, because it's so strange how well things worked out. And so I think this is a method that everyone should try. This may not be your first try, but I think it's something everyone should try. And so I'm going to give you a few ideas or a few kind of tips that I used while I was doing this. First thing, start with an image in mind of the start. Where do you want the story to start? You don't have to know where you want it to go, but you need to know where you want it to start. And from there, you can just start writing. Because let's be honest, if you want to write books, you've probably read books. You've probably seen movies or TV shows. You've seen scenes, and you know how scenes work. You may not think you do, but you probably know better than you think. And so what I recommend is have a scene. My scene was a girl named Aji, and she was standing on a path, and she had no idea where she was or who she was. She didn't remember anything. All she was is she was standing on a path, floating in the sky, with no idea who she was. And I mean, it sounds kind of cliche. She has amnesia. What kind of... like, so many movies and books have a main character with amnesia. But I didn't know where it was going. I just knew that she had amnesia. I knew she was standing on a path in the middle of an orange sky with blue lights in the distance, and she didn't know where she was. And from there, I just started writing. So what would she do? She would take stock. She had a bag on her back, so she would start looking and seeing what she had inside of it. She would look ahead. She would see that there was a fork, and then there was kind of a wider area of the road, and so she didn't want to fall into this abyss, whatever it was. So she decided she would hurry over there. I was like, well, maybe she'll find some people there. And at that point, she finds basically a food stand. And I'm not going to keep going from here, because I think it would be cool if you guys read it. But I just started saying, well, what would happen if this was how a scene started in a book or a movie, and where would it go? And from there, I started building things like, oh, well, now they'll probably ask about the nearby area. They'll ask about where they are. They'll ask, well, who are you? Introduce themselves. And from there, I started going, well, okay, well, what's the name? I got to come up with a name. So I came out with a name. I'm trying to remember what the name was. One of the guys was a crocodile. I just decided that would be a fun thing to add in. And he's the one who's in charge. She isn't from these parts, and I'm highlighting things. And Uggs is the crocodile. I'm trying to figure out there's a nearby town that the path went to. And then just like when she asks, I came up with what the name was. And it's just little things like that. As you go, you build the world. And it's just weird how it works. I feel like it's because I've just read so many books, and I've seen like movies and I've seen TV shows, and it's just like I know how it works when a scene happens. And so I can just go and just keep supplying information as it comes. And like I said, I'm not sure if I would recommend this for your first time trying to write a book. It may work out really well. I've never tried it because my first time writing a book, I was like 7 years old. But I was just so surprised at how well this worked out and how the world started like fleshing itself out. And like by the time I got like 50 pages in, I had a pretty good idea of how it was going to end. And it's just because you know how these things work. And as you start building the world, you start realizing what kind of problems will arise, what kind of things they need to overcome. And that's how the story came to be. And so that is method number 1. I mean, technically, no plot, no problem. It's just a method where you just start writing things and see how it turns out. And it's very, very possible that it turns out not making sense. But the thing is, it doesn't have to make sense to be a NaNoWriMo. Because no plot, no problem isn't actually a phrase I came up with. It's just one that people use when talking about NaNoWriMos all the time. The important thing is that you get the words on the paper and that you try and piece them together. And I just think that everyone who thinks of this is just like, oh yeah, that's the method you use if you just want to write a bunch of nonsense for NaNoWriMo. But no, I actually think it will come together. But not everyone is in that position. Not everyone is in a position where they just want to write a book, period. They don't care what book it is. A lot of people have an idea in their head. And I think that's actually a lot of people who want to do NaNoWriMo, but just don't feel comfortable with it. And it's because they've tried to write the book before and they got stuck. That's why I call it the I've never got past chapter 2 method. Because there's so many people out there who have stories in their head, they have characters and they want to make it happen, but they just get stuck every time. And that is kind of what I'm doing this year. So this is actually my NaNoWriMo for 2021. And it actually, so this was what I was trying to do in 2019. It was the same story. I've made a couple of changes just arbitrarily as I've been writing this like 200 pages. I can actually just look at the word count right now. I have 269 pages. That's not very much. The goal, by the way, if you want 50,000 words, is every day write 1,667. Newsflash, by the way, if you want to reach 50,000 words, write more than 1,667 words a day. Because you probably won't write 1,667 words every day. Things are going to come up. You're going to get stuck. Try and write every day if you can. But if you can write more than 1,667 words, do it. You will probably regret it if you don't, and you won't finish. But that aside, this is just like a page. So let's say you do have a book. You have characters in your head. You have a plot. You know how you want to end it. I feel like that's a really common thing for like people who have had a book idea in their head for a long time, but they haven't managed to write it, is they always have the ending really well planned out, and you know exactly how you want it to go. But you just can't get past a certain point in the book. Maybe you started writing it at one point, or maybe you just can't start. You feel like you're having trouble starting. You are one of the prime candidates to be helped so much by doing a NaNoWriMo. And if you have the time this month, do it. Open up a Word or a Google Doc on your computer right now if you're on a computer. If you're on a phone, you can also open up a Google Doc, but it might minimize the video. I don't know. You can probably have the video like in the corner of the screen while you open up. But like start writing something. And if you don't know how to start it, just think of the opening scene in a movie. It always starts with some kind of hook. Generally, something is happening. They're not starting by immediately describing the world. Sometimes they do. But very, very rarely. That can only really happen, like explaining, like the kind of exposition where they're like, in a world far away, there's this world, and in this world there's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. That never works unless you have a really, really good, in-depth, like, explanation for a world that's very different and interesting. I really don't recommend it. You want to start with something happening. And that's what I did here. I wasn't even thinking about this when I wrote it. I just started with the Princess Asrigma gasped, falling to her knees. That is an action sentence. That is the kind of sentence that you immediately like, whoa, hold on, why is she falling? What's going on? Is she okay? Princess, are you all right? Like, that's what her minister says, but you're probably saying that too as you're reading this line. That's the kind of thing you want to start with. And then you can start doing exposition. The Demon King's his advances weaken me. And then I start explaining about Digramar, the Demon King, and how Asrigmai was a follower of Leto, the goddess of light. And I was just making this up as I go. She left beacons around the world. That's why she's getting weak, is because the Demon King is advancing on this beacon that Asrigmai is tied to, right? So yeah, now you know why she's getting weak, because as he approaches, then it weakens the beacon because he found a way to corrupt it. And now suddenly you know what's going on. You know a lot about this world, that there's these beacons left by a goddess of light. You know there's a demon king attacking everyone. And it's kind of just set up the scene. But I started with she gasped falling to her knees. And it was like 3 paragraphs before I went into exposition. But it was still enough that you already know what's going on. You're in the scene. And that's the important part. But I recommend that to anyone who just doesn't know how to start. What is going on as it starts? What's happening when the reader gets into the story? Because stuff is happening before the story starts. But what's happening as the story starts? And you need to start it by telling them that action. Then you can start telling people about your world. But yeah, that's what I recommend. I love prologues. This is a prologue. For people who are like trying to learn to write, I mean, you probably know what a prologue is. You've probably read a book before. But the prologue is basically not a chapter. It's what happens like at the beginning of the book. It's the first thing you read, and then you go into chapter 1. I feel like prologues, even if you just start with a chapter 1, you should still treat it almost like a prologue. You need to set up the story. And I almost feel like it's better. Oh, sorry, that's Windows asking for an update. It's almost better if instead of starting, like showing off the main character, you start with a prologue that doesn't have the main character in it. I know that's weird, but it just feels like a good way to set up the story. So that when chapter 1 comes and you have the main character, you're like, hey, here's the main character. They're in this world. This is their place in it. But you already know about the world, so you kind of understand. And I don't know, that's just something I like. So that's what I recommend. If you're having trouble starting off with your main character, and you feel like you have too much exposition in the beginning, you're getting bored, just start with an action scene before you introduce the main character. And I feel like that'll kind of help you. But yeah, a couple more just kind of tips, and this goes for anyone, no matter what method you're using, or even if you're using a different method than these two I just talked about. If you have another idea for how you want to do it, do it. Just do it. That's the thing about NaNoWriMo. You've got to just do it. If you're on a scene, and this is again like I've never gotten past chapter 2, so I guess it is kind of the second one. Whatever. And you just don't know where to go from it. You just can't think of how to finish it. You want a character to say something, but you can't get the words together for what they're going to say. You know how you want the scene to end, but you don't know how to get from where you are to the end of the scene. Skip it. Just skip it. Or just make up something. When it comes to NaNoWriMo, you just want to write a lot of words. And I think that's what's so great about having the month time limit for 50,000 words. That's a lot of words in a month that you need to come up with and still do your regular life stuff. And I think the reason why that's so good is because it forces you to keep writing even when you don't know what to say. And that is the key to finishing a first draft. If you don't know how to finish the scene, you just literally write. And then everything just worked out so that this end scene state that I wanted happened. And then just keep writing. You don't have to figure out a logical way to get to where you want to be if you just can't do that at the moment. You just keep moving on and keep doing it. Some people might prefer to just skip to the end of the scene and then just write what happens afterwards, then skip back and write it. That's perfectly fine, but I just think it's really complicated for our tiny human brains to work it out. So, I really, really recommend, if you are stuck, just write something that's kind of dumb, but it will get you to the end, and it will actually help you out a lot to just be able to skip those scenes, because that's why people don't get past a certain point in novels. It's because the first time they hit a hard scene, they just stop because they don't want to skip it, because they're like, no, I need to write this. I need to get this done. But you just, your brain is kind of not working and you're kind of grating against it. You just need to get past it and you'll be able to write the next scene probably better than you think. But yeah, that's me rambling a bit about writing novels. I really, really recommend you do it. So this is the name pending, Keith and Asrigmai. I actually could see myself leaving this as the name, but if I think of something better, I want to change it. That's why I put name pending. But this is the NaNoWriMo website. I made this when I was 12, and I called myself Hero Pyromaniac. I think that's I put that instead of my name. Fun fact. But yeah, so this, basically when you go to NaNoWriMo, I think the plus button, something like that, will just basically add a new project in, and you can, I'm sure you guys can figure that out. But basically, I just wanted to show you guys how to update your progress, mostly because I need to update my progress, because I have 269 words that need to go on here. And so this is really all you do when you want to update it. On the official website, 269. And that's the total words. I guess I'm excited. More options. Oh my goodness. No, I'm not going to worry about that. But I'm just going to put 269 total words. I think you can click words this session. It wouldn't make a difference which one I clicked this time. But if I already had 269 words on there and I wrote 100 more, but I think it would be easier to do total words, because the word count feature just tells you the total words, and then you'll have to do math otherwise. But I'm going to update my progress, and now I have 269 out of 500 words, and I already got 2 badges. They give you badges just to help you stay on. Update more than once in a day. Well, maybe I'll do that later so that I can get an extra badge. Am I right? But anyway, just update your writing progress test for the first time. You get a badge. Right on the first day, you get a badge. And then if you do it more than once in a day, 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, 7 days in a row, 14 days in a row, 21 days in a row. And then if you update your progress every day, you get this badge. I don't think I'm going to get that badge, by the way. 1,667 words. That's how much you should be doing every day. And then you get a badge for 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, 40,000, and then you get this one for finishing the 50,000 word challenge. But anyway, final thoughts. I really, really recommend you do this. If you want to write a book, you don't know where to start, this is where you start. Is with a NaNoWriMo. And if you honestly cannot do it in November, but you feel like you could do it a different time, do it a different time. It really is so good to just hash out a 50,000 word novel in a month. Not because it's going to be a great novel, but because the things it's going to teach you about writing a first draft are some of the most difficult things to really master when you're trying to write novels. And yeah, I'm going to keep writing this. Last final note, what do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to see more tips and tricks about NaNoWriMo, about building a plot, about making characters, or do you just want to get updates on the story? I can totally give you guys updates on this specific story. There's a twist at the end of this prologue, by the way, just so you're aware. It's a pretty important twist. I don't know if I would call it like a spoiler, but it's going to definitely change the way the story plays out. But anyway, let me know. Let me know what you guys want. The comment section is your oyster right now. But anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching to the end and just listening to me ramble about how good I think writing books is. I think it's great. But yeah, just like the video. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to say that. And subscribe. That's another thing I'm supposed to say. But yeah, I just hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you do NaNoWriMo. I think it's awesome. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.